G'day, it's Jamie and welcome to Toombul Tigers. Today I'm reading some old newspaper articles about Charles Higgins and the Toombul Tigers that were located in the Brisbane area in the late 1880s. So we'll get into it. This first article was published in Brisbane's The Telegraph on Tuesday the 15th of December 1885, titled Tigers, a Caution. To the editor, Sir, I wish to draw to public attention to what I consider to be a danger of considerable magnitude, almost close to the Toombul railway station on the Sandgate line. For some time past, passengers to and from Sandgate may have seen two tigers and a bear secured by slender chains to trees with no other restraint in the open paddock, and if correctly informed, enjoying full liberty to roam abroad after nightfall. That such a thing should not be tolerated. I consider a wanton outrage of the safety of our community and would not have been allowed if the proper authorities had been informed of it sooner. The proper security of these animals within iron-barred cages or their immediate destruction should be insisted upon. The colony is now spending by sums of money to protect us from widespread danger of rabbits, which only destroy vegetation, and fines provided for to keep the danger down. And I ask in the name of common sense, shall we allow the possibility and probability of the man-eaters is to assert their freedom with the appalling danger of their multiplication and the sacrifice of human life, trusting that the proper authorities will at once remedy the danger referred to, and feeling astonished that no one has directed public attention to it before now. Yours, etc., Caution, the end. This next article was published in the Brisbane Courier on Friday the 9th of April 1886, titled Tigers at Toombul. At the residence of Mr. Higgins, about 500 yards from the Toombul station, there are two fine young tigers which for some time past have attracted the attention of travellers by the Sandgate trains. The cubs were presented to Mr. Higgins about 15 months ago, where they were only 3 months old, and since then he has brought them up as pets. According to the statement of the owner, they are pure Bengal tigers, which class of animals are considered most treacherous and are very rarely brought under the entire control of man. Those at Toombul are beautifully striped males from the same mother. They are very hard to rear, costing a deal of patience, trouble and expense. But the two grow strong and healthy, while a third, a sister, sickened and died. As they grew, they gave evidence of becoming thoroughly domesticated, and at the present time, they answer to their names, Jimmy and Sammy respectively. They are both very affectionate to Mr. Higgins, but both do not possess the same temper. For while Jimmy is inclined at times to be somewhat surly, Sammy is always of a playful disposition. When the owner is at home, they are tied by a long chain to a stake in the paddock. But when Mr. Higgins is called away, he shuts them up in a cage with iron bars, which the tigers could, if aroused, twist and bend into any shape. They are very strong and possess ponderous paws with long sharp claws. Mr. Higgins is by no means afraid of them now, nor does he believe that they will become any way vicious as they grow older. Having kept a menagerie for years and being well accustomed to animals of various kinds, he gives it his opinion that the tigers, carefully tamed and trained from infancy, will never prove treacherous to their keeper. He fondles each of them as one would a favourite dog, and they, in return, manifest every sign of affection, play and frisk and fawn on him, and cut most curious capers. When off the chain, only when he is present, they enter the house and deport themselves like domestic members of the feline species. They follow him through the bush as dogs do their master, and at the command of his voice, they crouch in submission at his foot. Of course, strangers dare not take liberties with them, but anyone can stroke their broad glossy backs and pat their heads gently. The boys from a neighbouring school are frequently allowed to visit the tigers, and both the boys and the tigers are very friendly. The tigers are fed on beef, which they consume in great quantity, and a little liver is given them occasionally as medicine. Mr. Higgins keeps them merely as pets, and although they are very valuable, he has no intention of parting with them. He also has a young black Java bear with a white nose and a very villainous face. The bear is chained to the bottom of a tree opposite a pole, on the summit of which a miserable little monkey is perched. The monkey had two companions, one of which was given away, and the other, in a fit of dejection, committed suicide by hanging, as monkeys often are known to do. The end. This next article was published in the Ballarat Courier on Friday the 16th of April 1886, titled Tigers at Large in Queensland. A gentleman near Brisbane owns 2 tame tigers, which accompany him in the bush. A police magistrate, speaking from the bench, states that if the tigers kill anybody, the owner will be liable for murder. The end. This next article was published in the Moreton Mail on Saturday the 17th of April 1886, titled Curry and Rice. What troubles enthusiasts will endure for their beloved hobby. 2 amateur photographers went the other day to take a picture of the tigers at Toombul. One artist got into the tree. The tigers were brought, properly grouped, and a picture taken by his friend. The fun then commenced. The man up the tree wanted to come down, but the dear tiger objected. The welkin rang with cries of Higgins, but Higgins was non-est. At last, driven to desperation, the artist jumped down and got away, leaving the seat of his pants and part of his hide in the tiger's possession. Diachylon pasta was at a premium in the family circle, and that young man slept face downwards for the rest of the week. The end. This next article was published in the Maryborough Chronicle, Wide Bay and Burnett Advertiser on Saturday the 17th of April 1886, titled Brisbane. Nervous people are hysterical over the publication of the fact that an eccentric gentleman bearing the classic name of Higgins keeps a couple of tigers and other beasts of prey as household pets at his residence on the Sandgate railway line. It is asserted that Higgins takes his walks abroad with the tigers following him, and speculation is rife as to how many book canvassers, sewing machine agents and life insurance doctors have been chawed up without leaving a clue of their fate. Higgins is a bold man, but he is very much boycotted just now. The end. This next article was published in the Queensland Times, Ipswich Herald and General Advertiser on Saturday the 17th of April 1886, titled Local and General News. 2 presumably tame tigers are being kept at Toombul near Brisbane by a gentleman named Higgins. The police authorities do not seem to relish the knowledge that carnivorous animals are at the liberty to wander about in their locality, and Mr. Higgins will be interviewed on the matter. The end. So this next article was published in Sydney's Globe on Tuesday the 20th of April 1886, titled Echoes of the Day. A gentleman near Brisbane takes 2 tame tigers with him for company in the bush oblivious of the fact that if the Tigers kill anybody, the owner will be liable for murder. The end. This next article was published in the Moreton Mail on Saturday the 1st of May 1886, titled Local Items. Those dear Tigers. The Toombul Tigers held a special levee on Good Friday. A visitor to them thus describes his experience. Higgins came with me, carrying a switch in his hand, and we first paid our compliments to Jimmy, who was chained up further away from the house. This aroused Sammy's jealousy, so we approached him to soothe his wounded feelings. Of course, I have seen tigers before, well guarded by iron bars, but my soul was filled with the desire to go and pat a tiger, only secured by a dog chain to a fence. On asking Higgins, he replied, "Show you shall." Sammy was couchant at the time, and his owner straddled him and invited me to draw near him and pat him. I did so when, like lightning, Sammy twisted round and, as neat as anything, had me by the wrist, giving at the same time a short snort like a gas engine. Mr. Higgins told me not to be frightened of him, that it was the stick he was snapping at just at his playfulness. I was to walk up boldly, not go sneaking along. Well, I did so at last, as I did not like to appear frightened before the other visitors, and just gave him 1, 2, 3 as quickly and as deftly as a good boxer will tap a novice on the nose. And then he retreated to a respectable distance, immensely proud of my performance. Jimmy was then unfastened and led over to Sammy to indulge in a boxing match. No claws allowed. Jimmy squared up and knocked Sammy over on his back when the latter got the former round the neck in the Toombul hug, and down went Jimmy. Jimmy was then encouraged and they had another round, till their chains got entangled round their legs. As their danders began to rise, they were separated, and Jimmy was tied to his fence again. Sammy was evidently indignant, for while his master was soothing him, he deliberately unsheathed his claws and gave Higgins a slap on the thigh with his paw, which must have drawn blood, as Sammy did not withdraw his hold. Mr. Higgins is a man of great courage and of iron will. He never flinched nor winced, but all the time keeping his eye fixed sternly on Master Sammy's face. He let him have a smart blow on the side of his jaw with his open hand. Sammy then let go. I must confess, I felt frightened, and much as I admire wild animals, I don't think I should care about having Bengal tigers for pets. Beautiful to look at, though they may be. The end. This next article was published in Brisbane's The Telegraph on Saturday the 10th of July, 1886, titled The Toombul Tigers. Consequent on certain representations having been made to the police authorities that 2 young tigers were frequently allowed by their owner at Toombul to be at large, we learn that they have now been confined in 2 heavy iron cages, from which their owner states it will be impossible for them to escape. The end. Okay, so this next article was published in the Moreton Mail on Saturday the 17th of July, 1886, titled Those Tigers. Some people seem to think, in spite of the fact that Mr. Higgins keeps his feline pets in a very strong cage, made specially for him by the Nundar Carriage Company, those blessed tigers will be the end of them yet. Last week, a family living near the racecourse, when just sitting down to tea, were perfectly appalled by terrible hoots and howlings. Some idiot rushed in yelling, "The tigers are loose, shut all your doors." Down flopped the missus on the floor in a dead faint, while the eldest daughter planted herself in the kitchen copper. After all the worry, it turned out not to be the tiger, but the Beaver, a new river steamer testing her fog whistle, hence the high strikes, the end. So this next article was published in the Moreton Mail on Saturday the 24th of July 1886, titled Worth Thinking Over. Mr. Higgins, the owner of the tigers at Toombul and other wild animals, has his whole heart and soul centred in the formation of a zoological gardens. He says he is ready and willing to spend £1,000 in the purchase of animals and in making improvements such as plantings, etc., if he can only obtain a suitable place of land near some centre of population where, by a small charge, he would get some remuneration for his time and trouble. The borough of Sandgate possesses, in the reserve at Cabbage Tree Creek, just the place suitable. A portion of it could be leased to Mr. Higgins at a nominal rent, and the rest, as we suggested last week, turned into a public ground and sports ground and garden. If Mr. Higgins would formulate his ideas and render his proposals in writing to the council, something might come of it. It would be a big boom from Sandgate to have the only zoological gardens in the colony located on her outskirts. The end. This next article was published in the Moreton Mail on Saturday the 2nd of October 1886, titled The Toombul Tigers. Taking advantage of an oft-repeated invitation from Mr. Higgins to go and see his tigers, I paid them a visit the other day and was well repaid for the time spent there. These two tigers, by name Jimmy and Sammy, are, for their age, just 17 months, the very largest specimens of the Royal Bengal tiger that I have ever had the opportunity of seeing. In height, they are each 3 feet, and they measure from the tip of their nose to the end of their tails 9 feet. Big and large, as the sailor says, with beautifully soft hides, and hair as fine almost as silk. These animals are most handsomely marked, or rather striped, and so exactly alike are they that it would be morally impossible for a stranger to tell the other from which. Though I made several tries as to which was Jimmy and which was Sammy, I was invariably wrong, though I watched most carefully. On arrival at the place, which is about 5 minutes' walk from the Toombul station, the babies, as Mr. Higgins calls them, were out for an airing, each being fastened with a long heavy trace chain to an iron pin in the ground. They lay on either side of a large gum tree, watching me with their heads turned on one side, just like a common house cat will set a bird. But the moment I came within possible reach, both sprang up and leapt to the end of their tether, every bristle up on end with excitement, and displaying a terrific row of ivories, as even and white as could be. Of course I kept a respectful distance, for one blow from their powerful paws would have settled my fate forever, and my mausoleum would have been a tiger's tum-tum. And my only epitaph, a paragraph in the daily papers headed "Frightful Accident." Mr. Higgins soon came up and quietened them, giving them a rubbing down with a curry comb and brush, which performance both seemed to enjoy immensely, grunting and purring, which latter sound is just like that of a domestic pussy when pleased, only much deeper and resembling a rather diapason of a large organ. Their toilet finished, each was escorted to their quarters, a large and substantial cage, 6 feet high by 9 feet long and 5 feet wide, built to the owner's orders by the Nundar Carriage Works. The cage is both comfortable and roomy, with shutters removable at will, so that the cats may be protected from the full strength of the sun if required. A wooden partition which can be withdrawn, and is so generally, except at meal times, is also added. These brutes are so fierce and savage by nature that the best friends at all other times, when the feeding hour at even time comes around, they have to be separated, else they would tear each other to pieces. Once in the cage, Mr. Higgins followed and proceeded to put his pets through their usual performances. First they jumped through an iron hoop, Then they stood upright in opposite corners of the cage. Then, again, they lay down and kept as still as possible, as if they were dead. At the word of command, they turned over on the broad of their backs, and at last Jimmy pillowed his head on the side of Sammy, whilst the owner sat down between the two of them, a wonderfully courageous thing to do, and unheard of with Bengal tigers, the fiercest and most treacherous animal in the world. Mr. Higgins has great nerve and an indomitable will of iron. With a little whip, he commands obedience, punishing when necessary, and also rewarding every act if well and quickly done. Ever on the watch, he is both prudent and courageous. These brutes are so cunning, they follow every movement out of the corner of their eyes. They would have you in a moment. While, for such large animals, their movements are like lightning flashes, resenting every little offence with a blow of their paw just like a cat. They know their owner, even on the darkest night, and obey him. But if an unfortunate stranger got into their clutches, they would ribbon him before he knew where he was. For that reason, they are now never allowed either off their chain or out of their cage. No one near fear them or on the chain unless he goes too close. For the strength of 5 horses could not break it. It's so close to the links and so thick. These tigers are magnificent animals to look at and are most to be admired when standing at their full height, when you get some idea of their size. Their strength, too, must be enormous, their front legs being more like pillars, so short and thick and strong are they. Their paws are very large, their claws being of great size, and as sharp as lancets. For their teeth, their tusks are fully 3 inches long. They are wonderfully light and agile for such ponderous and gigantic animals. To see the two trying to catch a rag tied on a broom handle reminded me most of the antics of a clipped kitten playing with a reel of cotton. I could have stood watching them for hours, but time and tide wait for no man, and the train was fast approaching. Before leaving, however, I had time to closely inspect a comical little cuss of a sugar bear from Java. She is only a baby and both harmless and innocent. The children about the place sit down and play with it at all times. Yet Mr. Carmichael, the secretary of the Toombul board, in his report on the menageries, described this poor little creature as a wild and ferocious animal. I fancy he must have been poking fun at the people who have acted in so childish a manner by getting up panics about the tigers, or else he woke up suffering from a nightmare and wrote his report after a heavy supper of crabs and cucumber. This bear is a tree climber and lives on fruits and lollies, cooked vegetables, puddings, etc., and his native habitat is a notorious robber of bees' nests for their honey. He is a strict vegetarian, having rooted antipathy to meat of every description. In saying goodbye to Mr. Higgins, I could not but help congratulating him on his animals and expressing a hope he would see was clear to add to them and to bring them down to Sandgate to form the nucleus of a zoological gardens there. Meanwhile, I would advise everyone with children to pay these tigers a visit. They are well worthy of inspection, besides which the youngsters are certain to learn more about nature and habits of these creatures from half an hour spent in their company than if they studied natural history for a month. I have always been of the opinion that an ounce of practice is worth a bag full of precept. The end. Okay, so this next article is where Charles Higgins has relocated to Sandgate and moved the Tigers there and has set up a menagerie. It was published in the Brisbane Courier on Monday, the 2nd of January, 1888. Not the least important of the current attractions at Sandgate is what is known as Higgins' Menagerie. Although the collection of wild animals being exhibited in a very unpretentious enclosure at the corner of Yundar Street and the Esplanade is regarded by the proprietor as but the nucleus of what he hopes will be a gigantic show. It already includes no fewer than 5 of the finest Bengal tigers ever seen in Australia. The most prominent of these are the two cubs, Sammy and Jimmy, already known to local fame as the Toombul Tigers. It will be remembered that more than 2 years ago, no small sensation was caused by the fact that this pair, then only a few months old, were running loose in Mr. Higgins' home paddock at Toombul. Since then, their master has trained them to perform a variety of movements at the word of command, and they treat him with even apparent affection. There are now fine-looking animals of nearly full size and are 2 years and 7 months old. The other 3 tigers comprise a very large 5-year-old and a male and female about 4-year-old. The elder brute is now being trained, and Mr. Higgins hopes to have sufficiently reduced him to subjugation to his will that within a month from this time he will be able to enter the cage. Additional interest attaches to the tigress from the fact that she is likely to give birth to 2 or 3 cubs within a few weeks. The other animals in the menagerie are a very fierce black panther, several monkeys, large and small, and a fine black bear. The bear is very tame and will take fruit, lollies and cakes from visitors' hands with the greatest delight. Mr. Higgins will increase his collection today by the addition of a large snake of the cobra species and several monkeys. He also expects to receive by the incoming British India steamer another panther and cheetah. The end. This next article is where Charles Higgins has moved his menagerie from Sandgate to in the city of Brisbane to George Street. It was published in Brisbane's The Week on Saturday the 24th of November 1888, titled Toombul Tiger Loose. A terrible amount of excitement was caused in George Street on Wednesday when the news spread that one of the tigers from Higgins' menagerie was loose. It appears that during the course of the morning, the place was receiving a general cleaning, and by an oversight, the door of the cage, which contained the 2 Toombul tigers, was not sufficiently secured. One of the brace, in walking around, pushed the door open and jumped out. It immediately attacked one of the keepers, a German called Peter, and bit and scratched him to a very serious extent. Mr. Higgins ran to the man's assistance and grappled with the animal, who made off and ran into Ann Street. Mr. Higgins, who is an elderly man, bravely followed and after some struggling secured the animal with a chain by means of which he has taken it into the enclosure and there secured to a fence. Higgins received a very nasty bite on the left arm, and the other man's injuries were also so severe as to render his immediate removal to the hospital necessary. The end. Okay, so this next article is a letter to the editor by Charles Higgins. It was published in the Brisbane Courier on Saturday the 24th of November 1888. The Tiger Incident. To the editor of the Brisbane Courier. Sir, will you kindly correct the various statements made in the press with regard to the Tiger Incident? The following is the true version. On Wednesday morning, I went into the cages to wash them. Before doing so, I fastened a chain around the cage so that no accident could happen. While my back was turned, Peter, the man, was handling the chain. I told him to keep away from the cage and not to come near at all. However, he persisted and was playing with the slide of the door when Jimmy jumped out. The tiger has been constantly teased by Peter when I was not there, and several gentlemen have since told me that when visiting my menagerie, they have often checked the man for doing so. When I noticed the tiger jump out, I called on Peter not to move, but he ran away and the tiger after him. I jumped out of the cage, secured the other tiger and went to his rescue. I managed to get the tiger off and called to Peter to run behind me, instead of which he ran away again and was knocked down 3 times by the animal inside the enclosure, once at the gate and the last time in the gutter in Turbot Street. In the hurry, I had nothing but my small whip in my hand, and the last time I only had a small switch in my hand, which broke. The tiger had Peter down, chewing on his head, and I put my arm into his mouth, crosswise, which he held and bit right through, and Peter escaped. I do not remember who took Peter away after I got the tiger off him. I drove the tiger into the enclosure, shut the gates, put the strap and chain on him and tied him to the fence. After he was tied up, some person outside put a gun through the boards and told me to stand to one side while he would shoot the animal. I, however, placed myself between the gun and the tiger and told the man it was cowardly to shoot him now he was tied up. With regard to the cages, the one Jimmy and Sammy are in was made by the carriage works at Nunda, regardless of expense. The bars are all the best steel, 1.5 inches apart. The flooring of the cage would stand the test of the heaviest animal. The cage to which the carpenter put a plank was a training cage, and not the one from which the tiger escaped. I am, sir, etc., Charles Higgins, the end. Okay, so this next article was in the State Library of Queensland on the 7th of December 2016, titled Bengal Tiger at Large in Brisbane, 1888, by Miles Simonon. On November 21st, 1888, Duncan Fords was crossing Turbot Street in Brisbane CBD when he witnessed a shocking spectacle, according to the Telegraph newspaper. Fords heard shrieking coming from Charles Higgins' great menagerie of wild-performing animals, situated on the corner of George and Turbot Streets. As he turned, he beheld a man running through the gate, hotly pursued by a large Bengal tiger. The tiger, named Jimmy, had escaped only moments earlier, when handyman Peter Bertram failed to secure the cage door while it was being cleaned. As the tiger emerged from its enclosure, Bertram panicked and ran. Witnesses were constantly startled at seeing an enormous Bengal tiger spring through the menagerie, flying through the air as if propelled from a catapult, and, with a roar, seizing an unfortunate man and felling him with one blow of his terrible paw. In pursuit was owner Higgins, who, armed only with a small whip, managed to subdue the tiger, but not before getting bitten on his arm. Burton was rushed to hospital in a critical condition. Higgins was also hospitalised when his arm became infected, leaving a man named William Madden in charge. Madden further inflamed locals by getting drunk and threatening to release more tigers, for which he was promptly arrested. Locals petitioned the mayor to have the menagerie closed. Before the tiger incidents, a Mr. Jarvis had also reported finding a monkey in his bedroom. A dingo also escaped in the days following, being captured in Alice Street after menacing some chickens. Prior to the incident, Jimmy and another tiger featuring in a menagerie named Sammy were well known in Brisbane as the Toombul Tigers, after being reared at Higgins' property close to the Toombul railway station. The end. A petition was quickly filed with council, and Higgins' property was put under police guard until the menagerie was no longer a public nuisance. Mr. Arthur Jarvis, a Venetian blind manufacturer and nervous neighbour, applied for a Supreme Court injunction, revealing a tiger had previously wandered into his workshop and a monkey had invaded his bedroom. Higgins' staff had the tendency to burn straw and manure directly under Jarvis's workshop window. Initially, Jarvis was loath to complain, having been reassured that if he did, Higgins would shoot him. Jarvis decided to take up his concerns with an employee, Mr. Gain. The burning stopped, but the excrement was then left to lie around and washed into Jarvis's premises in the rain. Mr. Higgins' staff also thoughtfully stacked the manure close to Mr. Jarvis's dining room window until an injunction had them remove it. At one point, with his entire family laid low from the smell of old bones, Mr. Jarvis glanced up from his sickbed and saw a monkey on the washstand. The noise of the barrel organ and the growling of the tigers when unfed robbed his children of sleep. A dead dingo reposed under their window, but the last straw was the Tigers' escape. The mayor took advantage of Higgins' hospitalisation to check the conditions at the menagerie, and once he had caught his breath, ordered the immediate removal of the old bones. It was thought that Higgins would relocate the animals after the attack. He did not. In June 1889, Jarvis was granted the injunction and Higgins was ordered to remove the animals. Higgins had been hoping the government would take over the animals to spare him the trouble and expense of moving them back to Toombul. To Mr. Jarvis's intense relief, Higgins shut down the menagerie and his animals found a new home at the Queensport Aquarium. Charles Higgins kept the shop for some time, selling trinkets he used to give away at his shows. In 1891, Peter Bertram, the employee who had been seriously mauled by one of Higgins's tigers, was involved in the shooting death of a young boy named Willie Gain, son of another of Higgins' menagerie employees. Bertram appeared in court, reported to be intentionally impaired, possibly as a result of the severe head wounds he received in George Street mauling. A lot of harrowing evidence was heard at the trial, but in the end, the jury could not agree to convict Bertram of murder or manslaughter and he was released. Charles Higgins, after so many years of adventure and controversy, retired to live at Browns Plains. He was killed when his horse-drawn cart overturned on Ipswich Road outside Chardon's Hotel in July 1894. The end. Wow, that was some pretty crazy stuff there. The moment I read that first article about a bloke keeping chained up in his backyard tigers, I knew there was going to be more to this story, and I've been taking me months to find the rest of this story. It's so irresponsible just having them chained up, and then when you're walking in the bush, having them walk freely with you. And I didn't even expect to have happen what happened in the end with the attacks. If you're listening still at this stage, you're a legend. I'm sorry it was so long, but I wanted to include all the stories, and I think I need to lie down now. Okay, that's it for me. I'll get back to you all next time. Bye.